Hi, welcome to Western Wisconsin Journal. I'm Maureen Ash, and I'm speaking today with Pam Jahnke. And she also goes by the name Fabulous Farm Babe.
That's right.
And it's going to take me a while to introduce her because she has such a background. She grew up on a dairy farm, as I did.
Mm-hmm.
She was in 4-H and FFA, well known to my family. She went to University of Wisconsin River Falls, majored in broadcast journalism and broad area ag. She started the college's first farm show, and from then on it was all farm all the time. She has been on radio and TV across Wisconsin. She was in 2010 president of the National Association of Farm Broadcasting. I have to read these because they're
You're making me
important.
feel old. You're making me feel old.
She was named the Friend of Agriculture by the Wisconsin Department of Ag for promoting Harvest of Hope Fund. And I want to stop here because that sounds important, and I want you to explain what that is.
Sure. It was something that was initiated in part through the Department of Agriculture's Farm Assistance Hotline. At the time when Harvest of Hope was really begun, things were not real rosy in agriculture. So
In
we're
what
talking,
year?
Well, it would have been at least 10 years ago.
Okay.
And what they were doing were just basic fundraisers, the standard bake sales, awareness building meetings and things like that. And because at that time I saw that there were a lot of my farm families, my friends, my listeners, my viewers that were under a lot of financial stress, I partnered with them, made sure that they were getting ample promotion on their events and whatever was going on, had them on from time to time talking about things that we never talk about in agriculture, the suicide thoughts and the stress in the family and how it can impact kids, stuff like that. So bringing that side of production agriculture, even in Wisconsin, to the front of the consuming audience, so they knew what was going on. So that's part of the reason why I got hooked up with, at that time, Dave Hansen at the Department of Agriculture and several of sociologists on the UW-Madison campus that were spearheading it.
Okay, now is it still
It probably is, Maureen, to tell you the truth, but agriculture in Wisconsin and everywhere has enjoyed a pretty strong financial bottom line for about the past 8 years. So it's not in as great a demand as it was previously. So it's kind of one of those programs, when you need it, then it suddenly steps up. When you don't need it, then it's a little bit more in the shadows.
I'm kind of reminded of one of Governor Doyle's, something that he said once. He said the best social program is a good job.
Yep.
And there you go.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well that's good. I'm going to continue on with more of what she's done. Agri-Marketing Person of the Year by the National Agri-Marketing Association. She was commended by the Wisconsin State Senate after she was named the Farm Broadcaster of the Year for the Western United States by the National Association of Farm Broadcasters. And you still farm?
Yep. It's an LLC. My home farm is in O'Connell County in northeast Wisconsin, 26 miles north of Lambeau Field. That's how I always benchmark it. And it's only 100 crop acres. When I grew up, it was a 40-cow dairy operation. Mom and dad, that was it. Truly a family farm. And now that my parents have retired from dairying, there's no livestock left. So my sister, my brother, and I, mom and dad, as well as our spouses, we run the crop ground. So it's kind of me beat feeding it from Madison up to the home farm during the growing season, from doing spring tillage and picking stones and getting things planted. And everybody on our team has a duty. My sister's the bookkeeper. My husband is the agronomist. My brother-in-law is the gearhead. He's the machinery guy. I'm the marketer. And it's crazy. When we were kids, we used to just be mad if we had to go pick rock or be out in the field.
Yeah.
Now here we are, adults, having a blast, just working together. It's amazing,
that's
the
good.
dynamics.
That's great. I should also mention why you're here, and that's you're the Grand Marshal
Yes.
And one of the things I wanted to talk about was trends in agriculture, because I think that you would know the most. And this is sort of telling that she's the Grand Marshal of the Hudson Hot Air Affair Torchlight Parade, which is tonight. And the theme of this year's celebration is Field to Flight. They're talking about agriculture. And that is a trend now. People are really interested in agriculture.
It is. And I think you experience it too, Maureen. I believe that it's kind of a renaissance of people suddenly wanting to be very connected with where their food comes from. They really want to know the farmer. And if they can vicariously meet them someplace, be it social media or somehow, they're attracted to that. Now, it's a revelation to me, so to speak, because I've grown up in this industry.
me
Every
too.
time that I talk or interview somebody, it could be my uncle, it could be my cousin, because it's the same common, denominator as I grew up in. But I'm glad, I'm really pleased that the consumer is so engaging with today's agriculture, and that they are looking at a lot of different facets of agriculture. There's the organic, there's the natural pasture raised, there's conventional agriculture, and there's interest in all facets of that and getting to know the grower. So I'm really, and for me, that's perfect. As far as I'm concerned, God put me in this place at just the right time because it's my passion. It's all I can ever fathom doing. And so for me to bring, in Madison, where I'm based, bring 80% of that audience I have that knows nothing about what I'm saying agriculturally related, bring them together with my growers and find those exchange stories. I love it. It's great.
So now, the people that I think are listening to this now, because out in the rural areas, we don't get cable.
Right.
I will never see this on
Yep,
my
I
home
hear
TV.
ya.
So you're talking now to people that live mostly in the cities.
Sure.
And so could you define maybe production ag
Sure.
for them?
Well, I think that there's so many misnomers when it comes to agriculture. People use phrases to their own liking. What I'll tell you is today in Wisconsin, we're still 99% of our farming operations are family owned. Now, people have a perception that if you've got more than 200 milk cows, or if you're running more than 1,000 crop acres, that you must be a big farm. Today, economy of scale says, no, that's an average sized farm in Wisconsin. We have multiple generations of families on the same farming operation. So now if I'm an urban dweller, someone that really hasn't ever had a tactile connection with farming, think of it this way. In your family, your kids want to go to swim lessons. They want to go to camp. They want a vacation. They want to go to the water park. They want to go up to the Mall of America. They want to have some fun. You know what? Farm kids want to do the same thing. So to afford those kinds of things that you consider standard quality of life, a farmer may have to milk more cows. He may have to have more crop acres to make sure the bottom line's viable. The other thing I always like to remind people is no matter what facet of agriculture you are involved in, you are self-insured. And that's a big deal with affordable health care. I just did a story this week that talked about in the 2014 tax returns, many farm families, no matter their size, are getting quite a shock that there are penalties they may have to pay if they do not have health insurance for themselves, and additional penalties they may have to pay if they don't have insurance for their employees. Maureen, 22% of Wisconsin dairy farm families have had no insurance at all. That's a tough pattern to break. And dairy prices in Wisconsin are going down. So the things that you take for granted on your 9-to-5 job are things that farm families have to work very hard to try to attain for themselves. So again, it goes back to that idea of size dictating what farming looks like today. It's really about the cost of living and trying to do right by your family. Organic farmers, I give them all the credit in the world. That's a very expensive enterprise to be involved with. It's very restrictive. You have to be very diligent about the things you do, very pragmatic on how you do it, and there's not necessarily always the premium there when it comes to the marketplace. So like I said, there's all different facets of agriculture, all different sizes. Like I said, in Wisconsin, 99% of it's all family owned, regardless of what it looks like from the road to you. And it's all the same challenges that every family faces. Trying to keep the kids happy, trying to pay the bills, trying to think about their education, trying to think about maybe getting them back on the farm or taking things over, thinking about your own retirement. Farms don't necessarily have a 401k like you may in your 9-to-5. All those things help to drive the size and the look of today's agriculture in Wisconsin.
That is, the insurance part is something that I have wondered about. When you talk about so many farmers not having insurance, why isn't there sort of a farmers union that would, an association that would broker for insurance that would cover them?
Sure, very good point. Well, first of all, there are different farm associations. We do have a Wisconsin Farmers Union that speaks advocacy for affordable health care. We've got the Wisconsin Farm Bureau that has a partner that is an insurance company. We also in Wisconsin had a very unique element called our Farmers Healthcare Cooperative. Bill Omican, who is a past deputy secretary for the Minnesota Department of Agriculture, is now the CEO of the cooperative network, which is farm co-ops in Minnesota and Wisconsin. And he helped to design a farmers healthcare cooperative that allowed farm families, agribusinesses, there's a lot of small agribusinesses out there too, to basically come together and in a pool. Regardless of what your pre-existing conditions would have been. See, one thing about agriculture is we are considered high risk just by virtue of our jobs. Agriculture is considered the second most dangerous profession following mining. So we have kind of a chip on our shoulder about that already. And then you start talking about pre-existing conditions. In Wisconsin, the average age of the farmer, although it's getting younger, is probably still around that 56 or so. So nobody getting any younger, things start falling apart a little bit more. Again, that kind of knocks you on the actuarial table. So that Farmers Health Care Cooperative turned into the umbrella to allow everybody to at least come in and get everything covered. It didn't matter if you had pre-existing. The rates weren't necessarily cheap, but at least it gave you an option. Unfortunately, according to my sources, with the Affordable Health Care Act, that Farmers Health Care Cooperative is no longer viable because it's not a part of the marketplace. And so now it's gone away. Any of the clientele that were with them now have to go to the marketplace and try to resecure their health care. And as you can imagine, people are busy. It's a kind of a complicated system. You don't really know who to talk to. People don't necessarily understand what you do in agriculture. So it gets to be quite a little bit of a challenge for farm families to take care of that. And then you got to come out of pocket. You don't know if you're going to qualify for those, I won't say refunds, but for that per diem to help you cover your health insurance costs. And if you qualify this year, it's based on your farm income. Well, farm incomes can go up and they can go down. Well, if you make more money this year, you sell livestock or something, now next year you won't get that per diem and all of a sudden you're taking the full shot for your health care. So again, I know that there's people that probably are going through this on their personal level, I understand. But for farm families, this is a real new wrinkle. And now to be forced to do that, it's caused a lot of stress,
Oh, that's really interesting. I remember being at a class, a market gardening class, and one of the farmers there who was teaching said that when his health care started to cost him, when his health insurance started to cost him more than $10 a day, he had to drop it.
Yep. The average farm family that is self-insuring, they're paying about $1,500 a month.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And in many cases, you stop and think about the kids and all that kind of stuff. That may only be catastrophic care. So it's a learning process. I'm not saying that it's Affordable Health Care's fault or anything like that. I think it's opened the eyes of a lot of farm families. There's been a lot of, you mentioned safety net kind of things, badger care and things like that. Well, the problem with agriculture is we're capital intense. We've got a lot of expensive equipment that we may only use 3 weeks out of the year. Our income can fluctuate drastically with commodity prices, and there's no way that some of those programs know how to compensate for that. So even though there may be the best of intentions on trying to help, when you get right down to the mathematics of it all, most of the time they don't. Farmers won't qualify.
Yeah. Okay. Well, and then as far as the trends in ag, I am noticing more and more young families going into these community-supported agriculture.
Correct.
Farmers market. I know the farmers market in River Falls is really burgeoning, and I'm guessing it's the same.
Oh, sure. Nationwide, really.
Yeah, the more and more. A lot of Hmong, people of the Hmong ancestry are farming. Are you seeing much of that in your, do you talk much about that in your?
Oh, sure. I'm in Madison. That's Berkeley West. So yeah, Berkeley East, I should say. But yeah, that trend is part of that renaissance that I was mentioning to you. There were times in my career when I'd go to a farm show And there were a lot of people just walking with canes or walkers and sitting down, the retired farmers that came along for the ride to see things. Now I'm pleased to see that I'm stubbing my foot on strollers because the young families are coming out. And what we're seeing is it's not just about those moms and dads that are going to the food co-op or going to the farmer's market or the pick your own stands or something like that. It's not just that. We're also seeing young families when, let's say, would it be about 2007, 2009, when our economy as a nation struggled, right? When the banking debacle was catching a lot of attention, brokers were losing their jobs, financial investors were losing their jobs, tax accountants were losing their jobs. Maureen, you know how many of those guys turned out to be farm kids that came back to the farm? Because agriculture was on a super cycle. As I said, for the past 8 to 10 years, corn, soybeans, all of our major staples in agriculture have been on what we call a super cycle. So we have seen fantastic prices. And that afforded those farm families to say, okay, come on back. You've worked I know, and I can name many examples. You worked as a financial investor, and now your brokerage firm, whatever, is giving you a pink slip, come home. And so that farm has now got a new set of skills, another professional on the payroll that looks at the operation a little differently. Those are the ones you said that have the bright ideas, that have a different way of marketing, that maybe want to do a little value-added production on the farm. Instead of just milking cows, now we're making cheese, we're making ice cream, we're doing farm tours, that type of thing. So it's really reinvigorated, in a lot of ways, a lot of farming operations. And it's gotten that next generation re-engaged, which we'd always kind of hoped for, not necessarily by plan or design, by accident perhaps, but they're still there. And that generation, that skill set also speaks very eloquently, telling the story of agriculture and how they produce their food with that mom and dad, with the, for lack of a better phrase, the yuppies that do the 9-to-5 corporate world but want to connect with where their food comes from. What a wonderful way to tell the story. Well, I used to be a financial investor, now I'm farming. Here's my story.
Yeah,
I love it. I love it.
That's apparently what...
It's not just in Wisconsin. Twin Cities may be a perfect example of how that mixing pot can come together. I see it dynamically. Rochester is another area that has a very interesting dynamic that way. Madison, obviously, the La Crosse area has got a real interesting dynamic like that. Milwaukee, Will Allen and his growing power down there. It's very interesting to see how these dynamics are coming in urban centers, but also in rural communities too. Just because you live in the country doesn't mean you know a lot about farming or where your food comes from. You got to make an effort.
Yeah, it's too bad I don't know that we get your show up here.
I know. I'm working on it. I'd love to. We'll see.
Oh, that's good. Well, I think I know you have to get on to the parade, so...
Time flies when you push my button on talking about that. But if people are curious, I'm active. Maureen and I were teasing about how social media, we didn't think we'd ever have to do it. Now we're doing it. But if people want to find me, I've got a website, fabulousfarmbabe.net, or just look for the Fabulous Farm Babe on Facebook. I'll probably be putting up all kinds of pictures of me and you chatting here and the parade and all that kind of fun stuff. I'll be with Jim Harvsdorf, former Wisconsin Ag Secretary, dairy farmer from Beldenville, and a buddy of mine. So him and I will be in the basket together tonight.
We're very proud of him. He's
a wonderful fella.
My neighbor.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, I'm from the town of River Falls, and he's from the town of River Falls, and very.
Yep. Love my Falcons. I can't wait to go back on campus tomorrow. I look like a fossil walking around with those kids anymore, but I love it all the same. I love that campus.
They are so young. They are so young.
Everybody's so young compared to me anymore.
Well, thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you for doing this,
Really
Maureen. I really
pleasant.
appreciate it.
Very, very generous of you with your time.
Not a problem. I enjoy it.
Okay. Well, thank you for watching the Western Wisconsin Journal.